Imagine waking up in the middle of the night, your room pitch black, and realizing you're not alone. Not with a person or an animal, but with something else. Something unseen. Tonight, we're sharing a story that comes from the quiet, terrifying moments when the world goes still and something uninvited joins you. This one's going to stick with you long after the video ends. This story was sent to me by a viewer, Sarah. Sarah is a generally very rational person, a student, and not one to believe in ghosts or anything supernatural. That changed for her about a year ago, and the experience still haunts her to this day. It started subtly. She'd been feeling a bit stressed with exams, pulling all-nighters, and her sleep schedule was all over the place. She began experiencing sleep paralysis, which for those who don't know, is when you wake up but your body is still in a state of paralysis from sleep. You can't move, can't speak, but you're fully aware. It's terrifying enough on its own, but for Sarah, it evolved into something far, far worse. The first few times, it was just the paralysis. She'd wake up, try to move, panic, and then eventually snap out of it. Annoying, but nothing truly creepy. Then, the auditory hallucinations began. She'd hear faint whispers, sometimes her name, sometimes just unintelligible murmuring, right next to her ear. She tried to tell herself it was just her mind playing tricks, a common symptom of sleep paralysis. But one night, it was different. She woke up, fully paralyzed as usual. Her room was dark, just a sliver of moonlight from her window. The whispers started closer this time, and they sounded wet. Like someone was speaking with their mouth full of water, or maybe their throat was raw. And then, she felt it. A pressure on her chest. It wasn't heavy, not like someone was sitting on her, but it was distinct. A subtle weight, like a cat had jumped on her, but she knew her cat was in the other room. She tried to cry out, tried to move, but nothing. Just the whispers and the pressure. Then, the air in the room grew cold. Not just a draft, but a localized, bone-chilling cold that seemed to emanate from the foot of her bed. And that's when she saw it. Not with her eyes, not truly. Her room was too dark. But she perceived it. A presence, a form, slowly materializing at the foot of her bed. It was tall, impossibly thin, and draped in a heavy, dark shroud. It didn't have a face, or at least, she couldn't discern one. It was just a void, a deeper darkness within the darkness of her room. The whispers intensified, becoming more frantic, more menacing, and closer, now directly above her. And then, the pressure on her chest increased, pressing down, making it harder to breathe. She felt a burning sensation on her skin where the pressure was, even though she couldn't see anything touching her. The shadowy figure at the foot of her bed began to lean forward. Slowly. Deliberately. She could feel its presence growing, its coldness spreading, and the whispers turned into a low, guttural growl that vibrated through her very bones. She felt like it was drinking the air from her lungs, feeding on her fear. As it leaned closer, she saw something else, something even more horrifying. 2 pinpricks of dull, glowing red light appeared within the void where its face should have been. They weren't like eyes. They were more like embers, burning with a cold, malevolent intensity. And in that moment she knew, with a terrifying certainty, that this wasn't sleep paralysis anymore. This was something else. Something that had found her. She closed her eyes as tightly as she could, praying, begging for it to stop. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The pressure on her chest became unbearable, the burning sensation searing. Just when she felt like she would suffocate, like her heart would burst from terror, it lifted. The cold dissipated, the whispers faded, and the pressure vanished. She gasped for air, her body racked with tremors. She lay there, wide awake, for hours, too terrified to move, too terrified to even open her eyes again. When dawn finally broke, painting her room in soft, safe light, she forced herself up. She showered, got dressed, and immediately left her apartment. She hasn't slept in that bed since. She couch-surfed for weeks, eventually getting a new apartment, and she leaves a light on every single night. She still has occasional bouts of sleep paralysis, but the shadowy figure with the glowing red eyes has never returned. She believes whatever it was drawn to her in that vulnerable state, and she fears it might still be out there, waiting for another moment of weakness. What an absolutely terrifying experience. Sarah's story makes you wonder, doesn't it? Have you ever had a sleep paralysis experience that felt like something more? Or encountered something in the dark that defies explanation? Share your chilling encounters in the comments below. I want to hear them. And if you were captivated by Sarah's nightmare and want to join our community of fear seekers, then hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got more real-life horrors and spine-tingling tales coming your way. Don't miss out. What if the place you loved most, the place that felt like home, slowly revealed itself to be something else? Something ancient, something hungry, beneath the surface? Tonight, we're talking about a house. Not just any house, but one that seemed to breathe, to watch, and to ultimately try and claim its inhabitants. This story comes from a source I trust implicitly, and it still gives me chills to even recount. This story was shared with me by a close friend, Alex. Alex and his wife, Clara, had always dreamed of restoring an old house. Not a new build, but something with character, with history. About 7 years ago, they found it, a beautiful Victorian-era home on the outskirts of a small, quiet town. It was a little rundown, overgrown with ivy, and had a strange, almost melancholic beauty to it. They fell in love immediately. The first few months were idyllic. They spent their weekends stripping wallpaper, sanding floors, and uncovering forgotten details. The house felt welcoming, full of potential. They'd often say it felt like the house was happy to have them. Then the singing started. At first, it was subtle. A low hum barely audible, that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves, particularly in the evenings. Alex thought it was the old pipes, or perhaps the wind whistling through a loose pane. Clara, however, found it unsettling. She said it sounded less like a pipe and more like a very deep, very slow breath being drawn. As the renovations progressed, so did the singing. It grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't melodic in any traditional sense. It was a resonant, vibrating sound, like a massive cello string being drawn, or a deep, sustained moan. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, filling the house. Sometimes, it would crescendo into a low, mournful wail that made the hairs on your arms stand on end. They tried everything to explain it. They had plumbers check the pipes, electricians inspect the wiring, even structural engineers look for foundation issues. No one could find a source. The house was sound, structurally. Yet, it continued to sing. And then, other things began. Objects would shift on their own. A book would slide off a shelf when no one was near it. A teacup would fall from the counter, shattering without explanation. Doors would creak open and shut, even when there was no draft. It was like the house was stretching, testing its limbs. One evening, Alex was alone in the living room, reading. The singing was particularly intense that night, a deep, throaty drone that resonated through the floorboards. Suddenly, the old grandfather clock in the hall, which hadn't worked in decades, began to chime. Not just a single chime, but all 12, slowly, deliberately, echoing through the house. When the last chime faded, the singing stopped, and was replaced by a chilling silence. A silence that felt heavy, watchful. Alex felt an intense, undeniable sensation of being observed. He looked up from his book. The shadows in the room seemed to deepen, to coalesce. He felt a cold breath on his neck, even though all the windows were closed. And from the corner of the room, near the unlit fireplace, he distinctly heard a low, raspy whisper. It wasn't a word, just a sound, like dry leaves rustling, but it was aimed directly at him. He bolted. He ran out of the house, got into his car, and waited for Clara to come home. When she did, he told her everything. She was scared, but also resolute. They had put so much into this house. They couldn't just leave. They tried to ignore it, to live with the house's strange quirks. but the house seemed to grow more aggressive. This singing would sometimes turn into angry, rumbling growls. The subtle movements of objects became more violent. Picture frames would fly off walls, plates would crash to the floor. They started finding strange symbols etched into the dust on windowsills, symbols they hadn't put there. And the cold spots in the house became so intense they would make them shiver even in summer. The final straw came one night when they were both asleep. Alex was woken by a piercing scream. It was Clara. He shot up, heart pounding, and saw her sitting bolt upright in bed, staring wide-eyed at the foot of their bed. Her face was pale, contorted in pure terror. "It's here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's standing there." Alex couldn't see anything in the dark, but he felt an overwhelming pressure, a suffocating presence in the room. He reached for the lamp, but his hand froze. He heard a soft, wet slithering sound from the foot of the bed, moving towards Clara. Clara let out a choked sob. "It's touching me," she whimpered. Alex, overcome with a primal fear he'd never known, finally managed to flip the switch. The room flooded with light. And there was nothing. The slithering stopped. The pressure lifted. But Clara was still shaking, tears streaming down her face, pointing at her leg. On her thigh, clearly visible against her pale skin, were 3 distinct, deep red welts, like long, thin scratch marks. No animal could have made them. No object in the room could have caused them. They packed their bags that very night. They left everything behind, the house, the dreams, the money they'd poured into it. They just walked away. They never explained to anyone why they left so abruptly, just that it didn't feel right. Alex says he sometimes still hears the faint, low hum in the quiet moments, a phantom echo of the house that sang. And he still dreams of the cold spots, the shifting shadows, and the feeling of being watched by something ancient and patient, something that considered them merely temporary guests in its home. That's the kind of story that makes you rethink old houses, isn't it? What do you think was living in that Victorian home? Was it a residual haunting, an elemental, or something far more malevolent? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you were thoroughly unnerved by this true account and want to dive deeper into the unexplained with us, then don't hesitate. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We've got more chilling tales from the shadows coming your way, so you won't want to miss our next video. Sweet dreams, if you can have them.